Hello and welcome back to Born to Rant. I'm Brandon, and this week we are going to be taking a look at a movie that I've seen so many times it practically mutated my DNA as a kid. A movie that has absolutely no business working as well as it does, and the movie that taught all 90s kids the most valuable lesson of all.
Wise man say forgiveness is divine, but never pay full price for late pizza.
In all seriousness, I genuinely think that this movie works so much better than it has any right to. Like, realistically, it should exist in the same category of flops as Howard the Duck or Masters of the Universe. But instead, it stands damn near toe-to-toe with Tim Burton's Batman as a movie that took a property that most people looked at as too silly to work and created a dark and unique movie that would appeal to kids, teens, and adults alike. I really think that the costumes designed by Jim Henson's Creature Shop still look absolutely incredible today, and really work within the world that the movie creates. There's also the fact that this movie kind of looks amazing. Don't get me wrong, it has a sort of cheap quality to the way it looks, but I think it really adds to the overall grit and keeps the movie from feeling like a live-action cartoon and more like the real world. Which is why today we are going to dive deep into the world of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We'll take a look at how the movie came to be, why it's still an absolute classic, and its legacy over 35 years later. So this is a movie that I really don't remember seeing for the first time because I was actually born the same year this movie was released. So growing up, this movie was just always in my house, and I really don't remember a time in my life without it. From the individual personalities of the turtles to the fight choreography and even the way it looked, all of it just grabbed my attention as a kid and it wouldn't let go. To the point that my brother and I would force our dad, who worked with greenhouses, to bring home rolls of landscaping tape from work so that we could tie it around our heads and wrists and pretend to be the Ninja Turtles. We of course lovingly referred to this as Ninja Tape. I also have to imagine this movie is directly responsible for my lifelong addiction to pizza, but that's neither here nor there. And like I said, this movie looks really incredible. Director Steve Barron and cinematographer John Fenner created a movie that plays with dark, moody lighting, but somehow doesn't feel dark and moody. Like, this movie really does feel like the exact midpoint between the dark and gritty origins of the comic book and the bright, kid-friendly adventures of the animated series. The opening stuff with the turtles in the sewer has always been an early standout moment for me, but then also the entire battle in the antique store looks absolutely amazing, and I love the break from the city we get once our heroes escape to April's family farm. But before I get too deep into waxing poetic about everything that makes Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles a great movie, let's go back in time and learn just a bit about how this movie came to be. And it all starts with these two guys, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, who created the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comics in 1984, and the comic became a hit pretty quickly, and just 3 years later in 1987, the animated show was brought to life on the small screen. And it was around this same time that Gary Proper happened to stumble across an issue of the comic book while he was touring with the comedian Gallagher, who he was managing at the time. And so Proper called up his producing partner Kim Dawson and told him about this cool and crazy comic that he'd found, and that the genius is that you could make the movie with no stars and just put some guys in costumes, have them do karate, and call it a day. And pretty quickly, the two were able to secure the rights and got to work on finding the funding to make the movie. Unfortunately though, every single studio that they went to pointed to the failure of Masters of the Universe, Howard the Duck, or the Garbage Pail Kids movie as the exact reason to stay away from making a live-action Turtles movie. And at the time, Dawson had started working with stand-up comedian and screenwriter Bobby Herbeck, who was working over at Golden Harvest Studios, which was based in Hong Kong and primarily known as a kung fu studio. And Herbeck started pestering the head of production, Tom Gray, about the Turtles movie, and understandably, Gray was completely uninterested in a movie called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That is until Herbeck begged Gray to go home and ask his kids if they knew anything at all about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And of course, the next day, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was set up at Golden Harvest with a budget of $3 million, and Steve Barron was hired to direct. And even though this would be his feature-length debut as a director, Barron had experience directing some classic music videos for a-ha, David Bowie, Madonna, and ZZ Top. He'd also directed a few episodes of Jim Henson's The Storyteller, making him really an ideal candidate for this movie. And at this point, Todd Langdon was brought on to helm the script, and he'd been working as a staff writer over on The Wonder Years, so Barron really had confidence that he'd be able to capture the heartfelt tone he was looking for in the movie. And well, Langdon did just that, because when he came in and pitched the full story, everyone was fully on board and the movie moved on to the next stage of production, which of course was figuring out how the hell they were going to make these turtles pop on screen and look realistic but not silly. And obviously, there was only ever one team that could have possibly brought the Turtles to life, and that is Jim Henson's Creature Shop. And initially, Henson was hesitant to come aboard the project, worried that the violence would be too much and make people think that they were in the business of making violent and bloody movies, but the team was able to assure him that the heart of the movie would be about the family dynamics and not the violence. So now the production had a director, a script, and they had Henson designing the suits. And the only problem is that this all caused the budget to immediately start ballooning past that $3 million that had initially been agreed to. So to find more budget, the team began looking for distributors, and Fox was an early choice, but it fell apart after some shakeups within the company, and the movie then ended up at New Line Cinema, who were able to provide an additional couple of $1 million towards the budget. As for casting, it sounds like it was a fairly simple casting process, with everyone in the movie auditioning for their respective parts. Actually, my favorite story that I found is that Judith Hoag was finishing up working on Cadillac Man right as she was starting Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and she was kind of embarrassed by it because, again, to an adult in 1989 with no context, that is the most insane name for a movie possible. But once her co-star Robin Williams heard she was going to be in the movie, he apparently lost his mind because he was a huge fan of the comics, and after that, Hoag was no longer embarrassed to say that she was playing April O'Neil in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. As for the Turtles themselves, Leif Tilden was cast as Donatello, Michelin Sisti was cast as Michelangelo, Josh Pace as Raphael, and David Foreman as Leonardo, and all four actors were given the opportunities to audition to be their characters' voice actors as well, but only Pace ended up getting that job. Tilden would be replaced by Corey Feldman, Sisti by Robbie Rist, and Foreman by Brian Tochi. And finally, in the summer of 1989, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles went into production with a budget of roughly $13.5 million, primarily filming in North Carolina with just a few shooting days in New York City for establishing shots. Also, because the suits were so big and made the actors a little slower, the dialogue and fight scenes with the Turtles were apparently all shot at 23 frames per second and then ramped up to 24 to give the Turtles just a little extra speed to their movements. Production would wrap in September of 1989, and as far as post-production goes, there are two very famous stories from this movie I want to touch on. The first is that this movie was originally edited by the one and only Sally Mankey, who would go on to become Quentin Tarantino's editor for every movie he made until she sadly passed away in 2010. Actually, Tarantino would often point to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as the movie that caught his eye and made him want to start working with Sally. The other story is that during post-production, Barron was realizing there were a few scenes that they ran out of money before he had a chance to film, and he really wanted to get those last couple of scenes. So without New Line or Golden Harvest knowledge, he took the movie over to Jeffrey Katzenberg at Disney and screened it for him twice, and Katzenberg liked the movie enough that he called up Tom Gray at Golden Harvest and offered to buy the movie for distribution. But of course, by this point, Gray had realized what they had on their hands and told Katzenberg they'd be keeping it at New Line. And anyway, right after this, both Steve Barron and Sally Mankey were both fired from the movie for going around the studio's back. And finally, on March 30th, 1990, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles the movie was released into theaters, and on its opening weekend, it made $25.3 million against its $13.5 million budget, and placed first at the box office, and the movie would go on to make a worldwide total of $202 million, making it a massive success for New Line and everyone involved. It would actually go on to become the fourth highest grossing movie of 1990 behind Ghost, Pretty Woman, and Home Alone. Rest in peace, Catherine O'Hara. Of course, once the movie was released onto home video, its popularity only exploded even further. In fact, we'd get a sequel just 1 year later. Before we go any further, if you're enjoying this video so far, just a quick reminder that Born to Rant is a completely independent channel, and there is no AI used in the making of my videos. And if that means anything to you, I'd appreciate it if you'd like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, with all of that out of the way, I think it's time for us to dive deep into this movie and everything that makes it still worth your time.
Yeah, all right, Leo. Get a grip, will you?
And if we're talking about what makes this movie a classic, what it boils down to is the little moments. It's April's opening voiceover explaining the crime spree, while John Duprez's score perfectly sets the late 80s tone of the movie. It It's the Turtles being revealed in the sewer after rescuing April, and Donnie saying,
Bossa Nova!
Bossa Nova?
Chevy Nova?
It's seen Sam Rockwell say,
Regular or mental?
and the Casablanca references, and Raphael's fight with Elias Koteas as Casey Jones, and I could keep going on because all 93 minutes of this movie have something that's worth talking about. But realistically, what makes this movie special is that it's about family, both the family you're born into and the family you choose. It's also a movie about grappling with death, even though none of our main heroes die. And Splinter sets this up from the very beginning, telling them that one day he won't be there anymore, and of course the Turtles don't take this seriously and instead start dancing and ordering pizza and being generally silly. But it's when Splinter is taken by the Foot Clan that the emotional core of the movie really kicks into gear. The shot of the Turtles showing up to April's apartment is genuinely a bit of a gut punch. The argument that Leo and Raph get into about going out to look for Splinter hits hard too. Like, you can genuinely feel how frustrated both characters are by the situation, with Raph wanting to be proactive and Leo wanting to wait and make more of a plan before acting. And this of course leads to Raph heading up to the roof to ninja fight the pain away, leading to what I think is objectively the best set piece in the entire movie, with the Foot Clan crashing into April's apartment and the antique store below, and the way the entire thing quickly catches on fire adds a real level of danger and drama to the entire sequence. Like, sure, it's still a fun action set piece with the Turtles doing sick karate moves and quipping every other second, and Casey crashing into the store to rescue everyone out of nowhere is also just a badass moment. But the farm is where the movie really settles into its emotional core. As a kid, this was always kind of my least favorite section of the movie because of the lack of action, but watching it again now as an adult, I kind of think it's what makes the movie. We get April and Casey flirting and hating each other, and I love that Casey never actually calls April by her name. It's always,
Lead the way, Toots. Babe, sweet cakes? Ah, princess.
and apparently originally the farm section was supposed to be a bit longer and quite a bit darker, with Mikey having had an entire side plot where he goes through an angry depression on the farm and his personality begins to change, but this was cut for time. There's also some reason to believe that that stuff was cut once Barron and Mankey had been fired from the movie, but that's neither here nor there. The farm really does have a lot of special moments though. I love Casey and Donnie working on the truck together and going through the alphabet while insulting each other. I love Leo not leaving Raph's side the entire time that he's unconscious. And of course, the best moment at the farm is when the four turtles venture out to meditate together and are greeted by Splinter's Force Ghost, even though he's not dead. And I think this is genuinely a really emotional scene. It's a dad telling his sons, I'm going to die, and that is sad, but you are going to be okay. I'm proud of you, and I love you. And it's just very, very sweet. Once we're back in the city, we get a few of my favorite jokes in the movie, like Casey being claustrophobic.
I've never even looked at another guy before.
What he means is that you're afraid of enclosed areas.
We also get to see Splinter's origin story, which of course sets up who the Shredder really is and his and Splinter's beef with one another. I actually really love how the flashbacks are shot here, with everything being dark and almost entirely in shadow. It's just a really cool and simple aesthetic. And finally, the showdown with the Shredder on the roof is great. I love that our heroes actually fail in their mission to take down the Shredder. I think it's a good lesson for them that they are not all powerful, they don't know everything, and that there are still people who can easily defeat them. Now, is that mildly undercut by Splinter just effortlessly tricking him into jumping off the roof and into a garbage truck? I guess you could think that if you're a nerd. No, seriously, the ending of the Shredder does a great job of balancing the movie's silliness with the movie's darkness. Like, it's silly when he flies off the roof and lands in the back of the truck, but it's dark as hell when Casey crushes him inside the truck. I mean, we know from the sequel that Shredder still lives, but that's a story for another day, because this movie ends the way all good Turtles movies should end.
I made a funny.
So, 35 years later, what is the legacy of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles the movie? Well, this movie is held in really high regard amongst millennials and 90s kids in general. Like, it's one of those movies you loved as a kid that when you watch back as an adult, you're not really embarrassed by. Are there some cringy moments and jokes? Sure. But honestly, they all still work really well within the context of the movie. And actually, this movie is so well loved that just this past December, Arrow Video went through the trouble of remastering and releasing this movie, Secret of the Ooze, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 on 4K Ultra HD, something I would really like to get my hands on at some point down the line. And speaking of Secret of the Ooze, like I said, that would be released just a year after this movie, and I kind of think it's just as good as this movie, though it's definitely more silly and closer to the cartoon and a lot less gritty. We'd also get several more animated versions of the Turtles over the years, plus Michael Bay did 2 live-action movies that I never really got around to seeing, and a couple of years ago we got Mutant Mayhem, which I thought rocked and I had a really great time watching it. There have been rumblings that we could see another movie set in this universe, but at this point in time, I don't know, it could be kind of cool. I think it would be impossible to capture the same kind of gritty but fun tone. But let me know in the comments, what do you think? Do you want to see a reboot of this franchise set in this same universe? Do you love this movie as much as I do? Do you low-key kind of prefer Secret of the Ooze, even though you know this movie is better? If you've made it this far into the video, thank you for watching, and a special thank you to my supporters on Patreon who actually chose for this movie to be covered on the channel. Don't forget, the patrons get exclusive access to monthly polls to help me decide what gets covered on the channel. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to learn more. Born to Rant is a completely independent channel, and we release new videos covering all of your childhood favorites every Thursday at 7 a.m. Pacific time. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.